How's it going, everybody? Welcome to General Hospital MV, my GA chapter show. Let's get into it. Thanksgiving carried over into this week in Port Charles, so the only proper way to start the show is to talk about the Quartermaines. Chase gets welcomed into the Quartermaine family, I guess. The rest of the family find out that Chase is the father of Brooklyn's baby, to which Monica had the most perfect response: nothing surprises me in this house anymore. Valentine shows up to the Quartermaines to kickstart his petty party and says that he now has the ELQ shares that he had previously given away to Brooklyn due to her lie, and that he is now the CEO of ELQ again. And then he announces that he tried the turkey and gave the rest to the dog, Annabelle II. Another Thanksgiving turkey dinner ruined for the Quartermaine family. I don't even know why they try anymore. Anyway, after that, Valentine starts to throw a bunch of insults at Brooklyn, and Chase gets mad and punches Valentine out, which would later get him suspended from the force because Valentine tattled on him. Petty mofo. Once Valentine leaves, Monica says that she's gonna call Luigi's for pizza, but before she can, the pizza's already at the door, and the delivery man is none other than Drew Kane himself. Now, this wasn't the first stop that Drew made in Port Charles, but we'll get into that in a little bit. He had a lovely reunion with the Quartermaine family, but of course he had to announce that his life comes back with a cost: Jason's life. Naturally, the news of Jason's death leaves the Quartermaines devastated, but Monica makes sure that Drew knows that that doesn't mean that they resent Drew being alive in any type of way. Now, as for Drew's first stop, of course, it was Sam and Scout. He didn't really have much of a reaction to Dante and Sam being a couple, and when Scout seen him, she was understandably shy. Poor Drew, his own daughter doesn't even recognize him, but in all fairness, he looks a little different from what he looked like before. You know, because of the recast. I got jokes. Now, of course, Drew had to tell Sam that Jason is dead, and that left her absolutely devastated for Danny, not for herself. Obviously. She wasn't in love with him for 20 years or anything. After Drew left, she did have her own Sonny Corinthos moment where she threw her barware against the wall, and Dante comforted her in bed. It's slim pickings in Port Charles. Who else is she gonna be with? Elsewhere in Port Charles, the Ashfords were having a little bit of a dramatic Thanksgiving. Marshall revealed to TJ that he was in fact his grandfather, and they had like an understanding, like civil moment, but then Curtis jumped in and all hell broke loose. Curtis was so livid that he decides to back out from Portia's Thanksgiving plans, and so Portia decides to have Thanksgiving at the Savoy, where he was planning on wallowing in his feelings. But Curtis was kind of grateful for it. It was an interesting bunch. Elizabeth and Finn and Violet were there, and Nina was there, and Phyllis was there. I got a little bit weirded out because she like hugged TJ as if she knew him, and I was like, you've been here like 2 seconds, what? Maybe they met on her one volunteer shift at GH. Now, the most entertaining household during Thanksgiving, surprisingly, was Alexis Davis's house. Now, it was a little strange that none of her daughters showed up for Thanksgiving, but you know, she was there with Sean and Spencer and Esme, who Alexis still isn't fond of. And then to make matters worse, Valentine shows up, and obviously Spencer has issues with Valentine, given that he tried to kill his dad and also tried to kill him as a child. And to make matters worse, Nicholas and Ava show up, so more heads are butting, and then just when you think it can't get any worse, the doorbell rings again. Alexis at this point thinks it's Satan, and she's not that far off because there is Victor Cassadine, who of course nobody told her was alive. And then Valentine lowers the boom by announcing that Victor is actually his father. Now all hell is breaking loose at this point, and Victor decides to play matriarch and say that this family needs to get their shit together. Victor trying to be like the voice of reason in the family is kind of hilarious because he's trying to comfort Alexis and being like, I know that you had your differences with Helena. She did kill your mother after all. And I'm like, this is so morbid. This family's so messed up. But yeah, it seems that Victor really wants to have the family stick together. Don't know how well that's gonna go. The morning after that, Sam visits Alexis and tells her about Drew being alive and Jason being dead, and how she's okay with that and she's moved on with her life and she's happy, and she wants her mom to be happy, so she offers her a job to work with her in her PI company. I mean, at this point, Alexis doesn't really have anything better to do, so why not? Oh, but going back to the previous night, I'm sure Sean was entertained by the Cassadine shenanigans, but I have to ask why he wasn't with TJ and the rest of the Ashfords for their Thanksgiving. It made no sense to me. Okay, moving on. Now, since Drew is back in Port Charles, that obviously means that Britt and Liesl are back in Port Charles. Britt tried to avoid Carly, but Carly saw her, and of course, Britt had to break the news to Carly that Jason was gone, And Carly was livid and took it all out on Britt, of course, blaming her for Jason being dead and wishing that she never met him. Now, while Carly was finding out the news from Britt, Sonny was finding out the news from Anna, leaving him devastated. He gets a call from Cyrus, who is basically gloating to Sonny that Jason is dead and wishing him a happy Thanksgiving. Cyrus never gives up, yo. Now, Carly got a whole ass montage dedicated to her and Jason's friendship while standing on the bridge that was very important to Jason and Robin, which was very strange, but I do have to give the show props for finding the scenes that Laura Wright shot at the beginning of her tenor of recreating the scenes of her and Jason meeting. That's a hard find. I gotta give them props for that. Now, Britt shows up to the bridge as well, and of course Carly is visibly upset, but then she remembers that Jason wouldn't want them fighting, and she asks Britt to stay with her on the bridge, and they kind of, they're there for each other. And even later in the week, they actually seem like they could become friends in the future. Stranger things have happened. I mean, after all, when Jason died the first time, Carly and Sam became besties. It could happen with Britt. Now, throughout the rest of the week, more of Jason's loved ones had found out that Jason had died, including Jocelyn and Spinelli. Sonny was the one that told Spinelli, and I loved their scenes because, Sonny comforted Spinelli, gave him a hug, offered him a place to crash, and I just think back to all the times that Sonny used to call Spinelli a freak. Rightfully so. I mean, he was pretty annoying back then, especially for a guy like Sonny. But I love that they had that moment together. Now, as sad as this week was overall, there was one extra happy couple in Port Charles, Liesl and Scotty. They reunited, and they couldn't even wait for Liesl to get out of the hospital before boinking in the bed, and Austin walked in on them. Super hilarious. I loved it. Now, elsewhere in the hospital, there is another couple that is somberly waiting for news on their child, Sasha and Brando. And Sasha has yet to meet the baby. Brando got to the night before, but Sasha has to wait on word from her doctor that it's okay for her to leave the hospital bed, but the doctor is in surgery. So with the help of Nina, they devise a plan to sneak Sasha out of there so that she can go and meet the baby. Nina distracts Amy with talks of possibly being in Crimson magazine, while Brando sneaks her out of the room and into the NICU where the baby is, and they get to meet their little one, and it's so sweet. Like I said last week, Brando and Sasha, the actors that play them rather, are killing these scenes. They're doing such a great job, and I'm so impressed. But anyway, they get to name the baby, and they named the baby Liam Mike Corbin, or Liam Mike Gilmore? I don't know what the last name is yet, but Liam Mike something, okay? Brando manages to sneak Sasha back into her room, and then Britt pays them a visit and gives them the rundown on their baby. She says that there is a whole team behind Liam's recovery, and that he will be okay. So that is great news, as long as that news holds up. I really don't want anything to happen to that baby. I mean, I know that Johnny and Sophia would rock those scenes, but I just want to see them happy. Sasha and Brando are such a cute couple, and they're arguably one of the happiest couples on the show, besides Liesl and Scotty, of course. But I just want them happy. We need a happy couple. There's so much misery on the show already. Now let's go back and talk about Drew for a moment, because he goes to pay Sonny and Carly a visit, and they're absolutely over the moon to see him, and Drew is over the moon to see them again too. But I'm a little bit confused because, as I recall, when the real Jason came back alive, they threw him out like last week's leftovers. They said, "You're not the real Jason, bye." And to be fair, Drew wasn't really fond of Sonny and Carly either. And even when Jocelyn and Oscar were dating, Drew and Carly barely interacted. I guess in all fairness, Carly needs someone with Jason's memories to latch on to still, so there we have it. There's Drew Kane. Let's talk Maxie for a moment. Remember how I said that Maxie wasn't very smart for going along with Chase and Brooklyn's plan? I think she heard me, because she went to the Quartermain house and ripped Brooklyn and Chase a new one for the plan, and thinks that it's best to tell Valentine the truth. However, I don't think that's going to happen, because the writers love to piss us off any way they can these days. Basically, Valentine showed up back to the house to say one final goodbye to Bailey. Valentine, of course, is devastated, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't even feel remotely sorry for this guy. This guy still has brought so much pain in the people of Port Charles that he still hasn't even paid for yet. Somewhere out there in the world is the first woman that Charlotte's seen as a mom that he faked her death and is holding her hostage somewhere for years now, and he still hasn't paid for that, and no one has discovered that yet. That man looked his own daughter straight in the eye, told her that she was dead, and traumatized this girl, and that girl is alive being held hostage to save his ass somewhere. So no, I do not feel sorry for Valentine. Anyway, Maxie did run into Drew at the house, and I'm a little bit confused because they make it seem like they were so close, but I can't recall them ever like interacting much when he was around the last time, so what gives? I mean, if I were to guess, they're being a little more heavy-handed with that because I think that Drew and Maxie are going to be close now. And I think eventually Peter is going to somehow get control of Drew again, and Drew is going to kidnap Maxie, and it's going to make it more dramatic for her. Now, speaking of Peter, he actually had some entertaining scenes this week thanks to the people he was interacting with. Peter was acting like a psycho in front of his doctor, who happens to be Austin, and of course we know how Austin feels about Maxie, and he needs to take blood from Peter, and he just stabs him, and he's like, oh sorry, I missed the vein I think, and then stabs him again. I'm like, oh my god. But he needs to be careful because Peter realizes that Maxie means something to him, and that's dangerous. You watch your back, Austin. This man is crazy. Peter also has a run-in with Nina, and she looks him dead in the eye, and she's like, there's a special place reserved in hell for you. And Peter's like, you might beat me there. And then he's like, you know, I'm surprised you're still in town. I thought Carly would have run you out. Unless Carly doesn't know that you had an affair with her husband. Carly happens to walk up behind Peter, and I think that there is a very good chance that Peter is gonna tell Carly the truth. Ain't that some shit? Man, imagine if a psychopath like Peter tells Carly the truth before Sonny does. Oh god, what if they put them together because they're a real life couple? Yikes! With any luck, someone will kill Peter before that. Hopefully, it might be Felicia, because it turns out that Christina Wagner is coming back to the show, and not only that, but she has signed a contract, so we're getting substantial Felicia scenes soon. Also, remember how I mentioned that Jeannie Francis was coming back to the show soon? It's very soon. In fact, she is back in town tomorrow. I am so excited to see Laura back because, let me hear it, Jeannie is GH. I will say it until they close the coffin. Anyway, that wraps up the show this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned this Wednesday on Dion's Corner for another GHMV Reacts live stream Christmas edition. We're watching classic General Hospital Christmas episodes. It'll be a lot of fun. I hope you join me. And if you liked this video here, give it a big old thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to. I would really appreciate it. And I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.